If you have type 2 diabetes, or even pre-diabetes, I want to ask you something personal. When was the last time you ate cheese? Because I've spent 20 years watching something happen at my patients' dinner tables. Something quiet, something well-intentioned, and something that is actually making their blood sugar harder to control. They hear the words, type 2 diabetes, and the very first thing they do is walk to the refrigerator and throw out every block of cheese on the shelf. They think they're doing the right thing. They're not. And today, I'm going to show you exactly why, and the 5 cheeses I personally recommend to my patients over 60 that can actually protect your blood sugar, not destroy it. This video is made for your benefit, so like the video quickly and subscribe to the channel so that you can keep getting new videos on time. I'm Dr. Matau. Jimmy, let's start. Now, before we go any further, I want to say something clearly. This isn't opinion. This isn't a trend. This is what the biochemistry actually shows. And when I get to number 1 on this list, most people are completely blindsided because they've been using it for years as nothing more than a sprinkle on pasta, never knowing it carries one of the most powerful vitamins tied directly to how your pancreas releases insulin. So stay with me, because that one could genuinely change things for you. Before we start, drop your age in the comments and tell me, which cheese is sitting in your refrigerator right now? Or did you stop eating cheese completely after your diagnosis? I read every comment, and your answers shape what I cover next. Let's get into it. Here's something almost no one explains correctly about cheese and blood sugar. And once you hear it, it will completely change how you read your glucose numbers. Cheese has a glycemic index of essentially 0, meaning it doesn't spike your blood sugar like bread or rice does. That part is true, but the story doesn't end there. About 30 to 60% of the protein in cheese can slowly be converted into glucose by your liver. It's called gluconeogenesis, and it happens quietly. About 3 hours after you eat. The fat in cheese, it can also create a small delayed effect on your blood sugar, not at 1 hour, not at 2 hours, at 4 to 6 hours. So here's what happens to thousands of diabetics every single day. They eat cheese. They check their blood sugar 1 hour later. The number looks perfect. They think, great, cheese is fine. But then 3 hours pass, and there's a gentle rise they didn't expect. And they don't connect it to what they ate, because nobody told them to check at that window. The cheese isn't betraying you. You're measuring at the wrong moment. Think about it this way. A slice of white bread, that's like throwing gasoline on a fire. The flame jumps fast, it burns hot, and it collapses just as fast. A proper serving of cheese, that's like a quiet ember in a wood stove. It doesn't flare, it glows, slowly, steadily, for hours. That's not dangerous. That's actually protective if you eat the right amount. 1 to 2 thin slices of a firm cheese, or 2 to 4 tablespoons of a soft cheese like ricotta or cottage cheese. At that portion, the protein and fat slow down how fast your stomach empties. They stimulate a hormone called GLP-1, the same hormone that medications like Ozempic and Wegovy target. In other words, the right portion of cheese protects your blood sugar from the rest of your meal. The wrong portion quietly works against you. So the question isn't whether to eat cheese. The question is which cheese and how much. And that's exactly what I'm about. Number 5 on my list is fresh mozzarella. And I'm starting here because this is probably the easiest cheese you can put in your cart tomorrow morning. No specialty store required. In 100 grams of fresh mozzarella, you get about 18 grams of high-quality protein, almost 0 carbohydrates, and a fat content that's noticeably lower than most aged cheeses. But the real reason mozzarella earns its place here? It's what it does for your gut. Fresh mozzarella is a naturally fermented cheese. It contains live bacterial cultures, mild probiotics. And over the last decade, the research connecting your gut microbiome to your insulin sensitivity has exploded. A healthy gut produces something called short-chain fatty acids, including one called butyrate, which directly supports the beta cells in your pancreas, the very cells that produce insulin. A healthy gut also dials down the low-grade inflammation that silently feeds insulin resistance, especially in adults over 60. Let me tell you about Kathleen, 67 years old, HbA1c of 7.2. She had cut out every dairy product for 3 years because someone told her saturated fat would make her diabetes worse. She was exhausted, hungry between meals, and her numbers weren't moving. I asked her to do one small thing: add 50 to 80 grams of fresh mozzarella to her lunch 4 times a week, paired with tomato, basil, a drizzle of olive oil, the classic caprese. 3 months later, her HbA1c dropped from 7.2 to 6.5, and the afternoon sugar cravings, the ones she'd been fighting for years, quietly disappeared. One caution: sodium content in mozzarella varies a lot between brands. If you have high blood pressure, check the label. Look for low-sodium versions, and avoid the rubbery, shrink-wrapped string cheese marketed to kids. That's a completely different product. It has almost none of the protective benefit I just described. Number 4 is cottage cheese, and I want you to pay attention to something most people completely miss about this one. Cottage cheese doesn't protect your blood sugar mainly through what it does in your bloodstream. It protects your blood sugar through what it stops you from doing 2 hours later. Let me explain. In 100 grams of cottage cheese, you get about 98 calories, 11 to 12 grams of protein, fewer than 4 grams of carbohydrate. Gram for gram, it is one of the highest protein-to-calorie foods in any American supermarket. And when you eat that much protein in that few calories, your body releases satiety hormones that keep your appetite quiet for the next 3 to 4 hours. Because here's the truth that most doctors don't say out loud. Most blood sugar damage doesn't come from the meal in front of you. It comes from the cookies at 3 in the afternoon, the handful of crackers when you're bored, the pretzels you grab when hunger sneaks up on you. Cottage cheese at breakfast quietly shuts that door before it even opens. There's also a second benefit working in the background. Cottage cheese is rich in calcium, and multiple large analyses in major nutrition journals have consistently shown that adequate calcium intake is associated with improved insulin sensitivity over time. It's not dramatic, it doesn't happen overnight, but it builds. Month after month. Here's the trap I see at the dairy aisle constantly. Plain cottage cheese, a friend, cottage cheese mixed with peaches floating in syrup? Not your friend. Some of those sweetened versions carry 18 to 20 grams of added sugar per cup. That wipes out every benefit I just described. Read the label. If you see syrup, sugar, or fruit juice concentrate, put it back. Use it plain. Add fresh strawberries. Spread it on whole grain toast. Use it as a dip with herbs and lemon. That's your blood sugar working for you, not against you. Number 3 takes us across the Mediterranean, and this one carries a fat that the rest of this list doesn't have. Number 3 is feta, and the reason feta belongs here has nothing to do with what most people think about when they hear that word. It has to do with the milk it comes from, and one very specific type of fat hiding inside that milk. Authentic Greek feta, the kind protected under European law, must be made from sheep's milk, or a blend of sheep and goat milk. That detail matters more than you might guess. Sheep's milk contains significantly higher levels of a fatty acid called CLA, conjugated linoleic acid. And CLA has shown up in study after study as a fat associated with improved insulin sensitivity. But more importantly for my patients over 60, CLA is associated with a reduction in visceral fat. Visceral fat. That's not the fat you can pinch at your waistline. That's the fat that wraps silently around your liver, your pancreas, your intestines. I describe it to my patients like grease that's built up around the engine of a car. From the outside, the car looks fine, but under the hood, every part is working harder, running hotter, wearing out faster. That's exactly what visceral fat does to your pancreas and liver, and it's one of the strongest drivers of insulin resistance in older adults. 2 things to know before you buy feta. First, American-style feta in plastic tubs is often made from cow's milk. It does not carry the same CLA profile. Look for the words "made from sheep's milk" on the label. Second, Feta is salty by design. If you have high blood pressure, rinse it briefly under cold water before using. That one step can cut the sodium by roughly a third. Crumble it over a Greek salad, use it in a spinach omelet, sprinkle it over roasted vegetables. Simple, powerful, and most people with diabetes never even consider it. Now we're at number 2, and this is the cheese I tell every single one of my patients to keep in their refrigerator at all times. Number 2 is ricotta. And ricotta earns this position because of a quiet biochemical fact that almost no one with diabetes has ever been told. Most cheeses are made from the solid curds of milk. Ricotta is different. Ricotta is made from the whey, the liquid left over when other cheeses are produced. That one difference changes everything about what ricotta does inside your body. The protein in ricotta is whey protein, the same protein sold in expensive tubs at fitness stores. The protein in most other cheeses is casein. They look identical on a nutrition label, but they behave very differently once you swallow them. Whey protein is absorbed faster. It's rich in an amino acid called leucine, one of the most powerful natural stimulators of GLP-1 release in the human gut. GLP-1, the same hormone pathway that Ozempic, Wegovy, and Mounjaro target. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that patients with type 2 diabetes who consumed whey protein shortly before a meal saw their after-meal blood sugar spike drop by nearly 28% from a spoonful of cheese eaten at the right time. Let me tell you about Raymond. 71 years old, 12 years with type 2 diabetes. He kept hitting what he called his afternoon crash around 4 p.m., shaky hands, foggy head, and a desperate hunger that always sent him straight to the cookie jar. I asked him to swap that afternoon snack for half a cup of ricotta stirred with fresh herbs, a slice of whole grain toast, and a small handful of almonds. 6 weeks later, the crashes were gone. His pre-dinner glucose readings were steadier than they'd been in years. One thing people struggle with: plain ricotta can taste flat at first. Stir in fresh basil, parsley, or chives, a pinch of salt, a drizzle of olive oil. Suddenly, it tastes like something you actually want to eat. Now, are you ready for number 1? Because this one is going to surprise you. Number 1 on my list is Parmesan, and I can already hear people saying, "Really? That little sprinkle on my pasta?" Yes, and once you understand why, you will never look at it the same way again. But I want to be clear. I am not talking about the powdered stuff in the green shaker can. I'm talking about authentic aged Parmigiano Reggiano imported from Italy, or a high-quality domestic aged Parmesan ripened for at least 18 to 24 months. In just 30 grams of that cheese, a small amount you'd use as a topping, you get 8 grams of protein, more protein per gram than any other cheese on this list. Almost zero carbohydrates. And because the long aging process breaks down nearly all the lactose, even people with mild lactose sensitivity can tolerate it beautifully. But the real reason Parmesan claims the top spot? Vitamin K2. Aged Parmigiano Reggiano carries one of the highest concentrations of vitamin K2 found in any animal source food on Earth. And vitamin K2, specifically the forms called MK4 and MK7, has growing evidence connecting it directly to how your pancreas releases insulin. A study published in Diabetes Care, following more than 38,000 adults for an average of 10 years, found that higher intake of vitamin K2 was associated with approximately a 20% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. 20%, from a vitamin that most people over 60 are chronically deficient in, and most people get it only from aged cheese, if they get it at all. Here's the part that gets me every time I explain this. Vitamin K2 acts like a traffic director inside your body. It tells calcium where to go. With enough K2, calcium goes into your bones and teeth, where you need it. Without enough K2, calcium can quietly drift into the walls of your arteries, into soft tissue, where it causes real, lasting damage. For a person over 60 managing type 2 diabetes, that matters enormously, because diabetic patients carry a risk of arterial calcification 2 to 4 times higher than the general population. Let me tell you about Laura, 69 years old, pre-diabetes, HbA1c of 6.2, and a recent scan showing early coronary calcification alongside early osteopenia. Her doctor had told her not to eat much dairy. She was scared, confused, trying to do everything right, and watching her numbers barely budge. I asked her to add 1 to 2 tablespoons of grated Parmigiano Reggiano daily, sprinkled over roasted vegetables, soups, scrambled eggs, alongside her usual walking routine. 8 months later, her HbA1c was 5.7, out of the pre-diabetes range entirely, and her bone density had stabilized. 1 or 2 tablespoons, that's all. Massive flavor, zero glycemic impact, and a quiet protective effect that most diabetics are completely missing. Now, before you walk into a grocery store, I need to warn you about 3 traps, because here's the uncomfortable truth. A cheese can be biochemically perfect on paper, and you can still walk out with a version that quietly works against you. Trap 1. The individually wrapped American cheese slice. The ones that don't even need refrigeration. I'll be honest with you. That product is not really cheese in any meaningful sense. It's a processed dairy compound with modified starches, vegetable oils, emulsifiers, and often added sugar. It delivers none of the GLP-1 stimulation, none of the probiotic benefit, none of the K2, none of the protection I just spent the last 15 minutes describing. Trap 2. Pre-shredded cheese in a bag. Manufacturers coat the shreds with cellulose powder and sometimes potato starch to prevent clumping. That adds 1 to 2 grams of hidden carbohydrates per serving. Most diabetics never count it. Trap 3. Cream cheese. Not dangerous in small amounts, but the fat-to-protein ratio is poor. You get plenty of calories and very little of the protein leverage that makes these 5 cheeses useful. The rule is simple. Read the ingredient list. If it's longer than milk, salt, rennet, bacterial cultures, put it back on the shelf. 2 more things I owe you before we close. If you're managing high blood pressure, heart failure, or chronic kidney disease, be honest about your total sodium for the day when you start eating more cheese. Rinsing feta helps. But it doesn't solve everything. Watch your ankles in the evening. Watch your morning weight. Those are your early warning signs. And one more truth. Not every body responds to saturated fat the same way. A small group of patients will see LDL cholesterol climb even as their blood sugar improves. So if you increase cheese, please get a lipid panel checked in about 3 months. Let the numbers tell you what your body actually prefers. This is about working with your body, not against it. Now, let me bring this all together, because I want you to walk away from this video knowing exactly what to do tomorrow. When you choose mozzarella, you are feeding the bacteria in your gut that quietly support insulin sensitivity. When you choose cottage cheese, you are buying yourself 3 to 4 hours of freedom from the snack drawer. When you choose feta, you are bringing in a fat that helps shrink the visceral fat hidden silently around your organs. When you choose ricotta, you are stimulating the same hormone pathway as the most advanced diabetes medications on the market. And when you choose aged Parmesan, you are quietly protecting both your pancreas and your arteries with a vitamin most people over 60 are severely deficient in. Here's what I want you to do this week. Step 1. Walk into your grocery store and buy 2 cheeses. 1 tub of plain ricotta. 1 wedge of aged Parmigiano Reggiano. Those 2 alone will cover most of your meals. Step 2. Change the order of your bites. Eat your cheese and vegetables first. Save your bread, rice, or pasta for last. That single shift in sequence will lower your after-meal glucose spike more than almost anything else you can do at the table. Step 3. The next time you check your blood sugar after a cheese-containing meal, check it twice. Once at the 1-hour mark, and again at the 3-hour mark, because that 3-hour window is where the real story is. And most people with diabetes have never been told to look there. Cheese is not the enemy of a person living with type 2 diabetes. The wrong kind, the wrong portion, and the wrong timing, those are. But the right cheese, eaten the right way, can be one of the most powerful tools you have, and it's already sitting in grocery stores across America, waiting for you to stop being afraid of it. Now, I want to know something. Drop a comment and tell me, which of these 5 cheeses are you going to try first? And have you ever checked your blood sugar at the 3-hour mark? Because in my next video, I'm going to show you the 5 morning habits that are silently raising your blood sugar before you even eat breakfast. Most people over 60 are doing at least 2 of them without even realizing it. You do not want to miss that one.